Awesome. Hello, everybody. It is 10 o'clock, so we will get started here. Welcome, everybody, to the NNP Symposium, fully funded by EPNIS, the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society. We are super excited that you guys are all here today. We hope that you were able to tune in to a few of the presentations that happened on Friday and Saturday. But if this is your first one, or if you've watched several of them the past 2 days, we are glad that you tuned in today. This is a very interesting topic, and I'm super excited to hear what Alexandria has to tell us on this topic. She's super knowledgeable on this, and so I will actually introduce her in a little bit. I'll go over a few housekeeping, if you can call it that. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, so throughout the presentation, if you guys have any questions for Alexandria, just put them in there. We'll save a little time for a question and answer session at the end of the presentation, so you can make sure to get your questions answered. And also, this is being recorded, and so if you haven't had a chance to watch any of the other presentations with the NNP Symposium, they will all be uploaded on our website about 2 weeks after the NNP Symposium closes. So you can find them all there, or if you wanted to rewatch this one, you can do that too. So watch out on our social media. We will be posting when those are available. And that is all I had for housekeeping stuff. Alexandria, if you wanted to unmute yourself and start your video so that everyone can see you, I will go ahead and introduce you. Awesome. Well, everybody, this is Alexandrea Zieman, and she will be telling us how to run a coin shop. As I said, she's knowledgeable on the topic. She actually opened up her own coin shop. So this is a great opportunity for you guys to ask questions from someone who knows what they're doing. So Alexandria, I will let you take it away, and thank you for volunteering your time with us.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so hello everybody. As you have heard from my facilitator, my name is Alexandrea Zieman. I've been a numismatist for about 17 years. Just recently, believe it or not, just recently opened up my own coin shop. It's been open for about just shy of a year and a half, actually. Beautiful St. Augustine, a beautiful shop, beautiful city. And yeah, I'm going to kind of talk about a little bit about basically how to run a coin shop, a lot of the things that you might come across, a lot of things that you may not see coming, I should say, because with running a coin shop, it's not as simple as just like, oh, I'm just going to open up a coin shop. There's a whole lot of speed bumps, a whole lot of missed turns, a whole lot of stuff like that. And this whole seminar is mostly going to be kind of about just kind of letting you know a little bit like, oh, what to expect, we're not expecting, and all of this, that, and the other. So yeah, I'm going to just start. Let me see here. Oh, there's my slide. Yep, there we go. Okay. And so my presentation is going to run about an hour-ish, maybe a little bit less, but I am going to go over each of these points in great detail. So, and just kind of add a little bit on each one. Working a coin shop is not easy. This is one of the main points I wanted to put out there. And anybody else that I know that has a shop will literally say this to anybody, is that working a coin shop is truly not easy. And the first point that I have is that you must have a passion for coins, because you are going to be working a great deal with coins. You're going to be surrounded by them, talking about them 24/7. It's not like a regular 9-to-5 job where it's like you just go on home and you could just forget about it. That's 100% not the case. Fortunately, unfortunately, if you really like coins, then you're just going to be immersified with it. You're going to be just surrounded by it. And so you really do got to have a deep passion for coins if you want to have a coin shop. It's not like, oh, it's something I may think about. There's no turn off switch, if that makes any sense. And so, that's what I'm saying. You got to have a passion. You got to have a love for it. You got to be dedicated to it, dedicated to learning more about it, because you could be working in coins for 50 years and there will still be something that you learn about it. There's always going to be something new that comes on up, new collections, new information, new varieties, new discoveries, anything like that. And so And believe it or not, and this is just, and I'm going to bring up a lot of examples of my own shop, not saying that you have to run your shop like I do. Like, I don't mean that at all, but this is just one of my prime examples. My shop personally is open 7 days a week. So I work 7 days a week. I work, like I said, doesn't mean that you have to. You could totally take a day off. You could totally get some rest, anything like that. But like I said, I find myself working 7 days a week. And even if I do take a day off, most of that day is usually spent going online, trying to buy some coins online, trying to find some more inventory for the shop, trying to find anything like that, trying to even network with some people, talk with some people, talk with even my really good customers. And so even at home, I find myself working all the time, working at your shop, working from home, it's all the same. It does require a lot of time to answer phone calls and respond to emails. I cannot stress this one enough. And I'm pretty sure I put my phone on silent for this one, but who knows? My phone has been glitchy lately. And so I get phone calls pretty frequently, anywhere from 6 a.m. I've had people legitimately call me at 6 a.m. I'm like, I'm still sleeping. And people calling me, and the latest phone call I've had was 12:30 at night. And I can't even joke about that one. I've actually had somebody literally call me at 12:30 at night saying, "You got any coins?" I'm like, "You know what time it is? Like, I'll call you in the morning, sir. I'll call you when my shop is open. I wanted to tell him what time it is, but he was like, "I want to know about coins. But it's one of those things where it's like, you will get a lot of phone calls during very weird times. You'll get a lot of emails. Some of them, a lot of them are going to be serious stuff. A lot of them, you're going to get a lot of spam emails. You're going to get a lot of ads. You're going to get, as soon as you open up a business, you register your name, you're going to get a lot of ads. You're going to get a lot of that stuff. My email is halfway chucked full of ads and all this, that, and the other. And then the other half is all, is actual customers trying to reach on out to me. And so you're going to deal with a whole lot of that. Take photos of your coins and market your coins online. In this case, since my family, we're all in a family business, it's mostly my parents and I that do a lot of marketing together. My parents and I run Facebook groups and all of this, that, and the other, trying to market coins that we have, any new buys that we've gotten, anything like that. And really, you just want to constantly put your stuff out there. Believe it or not, there was one time I posted on a Twitter page. I literally posted on a Twitter page about me doing some coins. And I had one of my old high school friends message me, and she was like, "Oh my God, I love coins now." Like back when I was in school, she was like, "I don't care really." But now she's really interested in coins. And so I was actually able to send her like about a box of like $50-ish worth of coins. And so it's really great to market yourself, put your stuff out there, because you never know who's gonna like your coins. You never know who's gonna want them. You never know who may take an interest, think about it. It's like, oh, you know what, I maybe want to see their shop, see what they got, see what's just stuff like that. And so I think that was a little interesting little thing that I had happen like a couple of months ago, that I had a friend of mine I just randomly posted some coins, and it's like, oh, made a good sale, reconnected with one of my old friends. And yeah, it's, you gotta, like I said, you gotta constantly throw yourself out there. You gotta let people know like, hey, I'm here. And then that kind of brings you up to the next point of maintaining inventory. And one of the biggest things with a coin shop was, so many people think that it's like, oh, I'm going to buy like $20,000 worth of coins and that should last me like a year. And that is not the case. That is far from the case, because most dealers, heck, I know some dealers at shows that can move 20 grand worth of merchandise in one show, in one weekend. And so it's one of those things where you constantly got to be maintaining that inventory. You don't want to, have somebody come in your shop and it's like, oh, hey, do you have silver eagles? And you're like, no. Do you have Morgan dollars? No. Do you have wheat pennies? No. Do you have, currency? No. You don't want to say any of that because you want to constantly keep maintaining and building your inventory. You want to get bigger and better. Because for a prime example, even when I opened my own shop, my inventory was very low. I did not have a lot of stuff. My cases were very sparse. Every little item was spaced apart just right to make it look full. And that's what I had to do with the inventory that I had. Now I got so much inventory that it's piling on top of each other, borderline in the cases. Nicely though, got to keep the nice presentation. But you always want to keep building on your inventory, and you want to kind of observe what your customers like. What do your customers want? What are people buying? And it's mostly going to depend on what area you're in. Obviously, if you live somewhere in Kentucky, maybe some Kentucky Transit tokens do well. Maybe some, certain areas and certain types of local pieces are going to sell really well. And most of the time, those pieces will sell well. You just got to find the right customer. And they will walk in because you're going to have those people that are like, oh, born and raised in that town. They're going to want stuff from that town. And so, constantly got to be looking for inventory like that, stuff that just sells. And of course, just anything like basics, such as silver, gold, eagles, Morgans, piece, 90%. You always want to have stuff like that on hand. Wheat pennies may not be a huge deal, but I went about a couple of days without wheat pennies, and I've had so many people ask me for wheat pennies in that 4-day span. I did not have any wheat pennies. I just sold them out, and I was like, so you got to constantly, because you never know when you're going to miss that one decent sale or lose a connection with that one client who was going to constantly come on back. But since you don't have what they're looking for, they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to go back to that shop because they just never have what I'm looking for. They just never have just anything, something like that. Even though you might, if it's not something they're interested in, if you don't make an effort at least to try to find something that could spark their interest, you could potentially lose a customer. But that's, I've had customers that come on in 10 times before I finally get something in, and it's like, oh wait, this is something I'm looking for. This is something that I want. And so you're gonna spend a lot of your time trying to maintain inventory. And like I said, going online, going on eBay, trying to see what you can snag, trying to see what you can try to find on eBay is going to be one of the main things. On Facebook, I know there's a lot of good deals. We've gotten a lot of really decent deals on Facebook, and so that's one of a really good place to try to find some coins at a really decent deal. And so yeah, and then of course just buying coins from whoever comes into the door, buying collections. I'm one of those types of dealers where I don't cherry pick. I buy everything. If you got 30 Morgan dollars and a whole bunch of rusted, corroded wheat pennies, I buy the rusted, corroded, junky wheat pennies along with the Morgan dollars. I don't care. I just buy it all, because you never know when somebody could actually say, yeah, I want those corroded wheat pennies because I'm going to use them for something. Who knows? So I buy everything because you never know what you can sell. Because I've sold all sorts of stuff that I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to sell this. And then somebody comes in like, oh my God, I want this. How much do you want? And so you never know. You always want to constantly keep your inventory full. It's better to keep your inventory full and overflowing than it to be shrinking. You never want it to be shrinking. So, and then the next 2 points kind of all go together. Advertising, insurance, regulations, permits, licenses, and state sales taxes. There is a lot of that. When I first opened my coin shop, I thought it was something as simple as oh, you just buy a lease and you open up a shop. And that could not be any further from the truth. It is a lot of permits and licensing and state sales tax and back and forth between government buildings trying to make your just everything official. And every single city, county, and state is different. Some states, well, obviously state sales tax, you gotta have that. Here in Florida, I know you gotta register through, I believe, SunBiz. But that's just here in Florida. I know every single state is different, and I'm not sure what they're called in every state, but it's basically just making sure that your business is a legitimate business, that you're actually pulling in money, and then that's where you pay your state sales tax. And then licenses and permits. For us, it was for at least my shop, it was all mostly coming down to the permits. I needed 2 specific permits. Obviously, I got my state sales tax, and that's actually posted visibly on my wall, like where you could see my official document where it's like, yep, this is an official business. And then I got 2 permits, 2 business permits. I got a city permit and I got a county permit. And so and most of those permits and licensing doesn't really cost a lot of money. For me personally, it costs like about not even, I believe, $40 a piece. And so, and like I said, some states vary. Some states it could be $100. Some states it could be $10. But I would want to assume that most of them are going to be right around that range. They're not too expensive. And then regulations, and I know I'm kind of like working backwards here on my slide, but regulations, this again goes kind of different with every city, anywhere you go. Most cities are pretty lenient on regulations on what they allow, mostly when it comes to signage and display of your store, where it's like, oh, don't, some cities could be like, oh, don't paint it a weird, crazy color. Well, that's one of those regulations you got to abide by. In the city where I'm at, St. Augustine, since it's one of the oldest cities in America, the city likes to keep that presence of it being an old city alive. And you can't have anything, too out there, too flashy. The signs that we had to put up, the signs literally, the city has only one sign maker, and the city has to approve your sign. And that's just a sign. So it's like you could possibly reach through some of those regulations if you go through like either older cities, and a lot of those older cities I recommend are really good to open up a coin shop, especially where you have a lot of foot traffic. But you may come across a little bit more speed bumps along the way where it's like, oh, the city wants this, the city doesn't want you to use these words, the city doesn't want you to use these kind of colors on your signs or in your storefront, anything like that, like no bars on your windows. And so that's always something to discuss with the city when opening a shop. If you're like, hey, I'm planning on opening a shop in this area of the city, what am I not allowed to do? What am I allowed to do? Stuff like that. So that's something to always discuss with the city, because then they're going to tell you straight what they allow and don't allow. And then insurance. Insurance with most leasing places, they're going to require you to have insurance, which I was unaware of, but that could be just my, me just being naive, unknowing, stuff like that. But yeah, there is insurance, and most places, when you lease out a place, it doesn't automatically come with it. But I should have saw that one coming, kind of similar to like an apartment complex such as this, where, you got to you pay for your own lease, but then they require you to have your own insurance. And so with a shop, you're going to be expected the same thing. Insurance is never going to come with it. You got to buy your own insurance, everything like that. It's not too terribly expensive for smaller shops, especially when they're in line with other shops. But if it's a standalone building, that it could probably be a whole lot more. At least I would imagine. Because that's at least my shop. My shop aligns with a whole bunch of other shops in one huge building, so the insurance is not as bad. And so that's always something to consider, where it's like, okay, if you have a standalone building, more than likely you're going to be spending a whole lot more money on insurance. And that is, it's like my insurance is like a few $100s a year. Not that bad. It still bites you in the butt a little bit when you get that bill and you're like, oh, that's a few $100s out of my pocket, but it's a whole lot better than when you get a bill in your standalone building and it's like, oh wait, $2,000. It feels like a whole nother tax day. And so that's always something to consider when opening up a shop. And then advertising. Advertising is kind of a straightforward thing. At least with advertising, me personally, I kind of just see like how much exposure is it truly going to get? Is it going to reach your target market? Is it going to, be kind of worth the money? And it's with advertising, it's so hard to say. And funny enough, one of the constant emails that I get is from a radio station, and they're wanting to do a ad where it's like, oh, we can reach potentially 10,000 people. And as a business owner, you're like, potentially. It's like that's such a vague kind of it doesn't feel so concrete. Like, I want to ensure that I'm reaching out to 10,000 people, but what is that reaching out to 10,000 people, potential 10,000 people worth? What's it worth in your head? How many phone calls do you expect to get from it? And like I said, this was a radio station. So it's like, how many people listen to the radio nowadays? That's another thing to kind of consider. What you're advertising through. Are you going to be handing out flyers to people where people get to physically see and hold your address? With the radio stations, how many times do you find yourself like, oh, I hear this amazing ad, let me write it down? How many times do you do that? So it's one of those other things. And then of course you could choose to have huge billboards, obviously just more signage around your shop, handing out flyers, handing out business cards, putting out pamphlets, because nothing wrong with putting out some cool pamphlets, nothing wrong with that. Or just putting them in magazines, putting them in anything like that. Currently, I'm actually thinking about putting one in one of the local tour guide books. And so it'll open up a whole new, bring in some of the locals, mostly a whole lot of tourists, bring in a little bit of everybody, bring in, because that's a lot of my target market is going to be a lot of the locals, because the locals, who doesn't love coupons? Because hey, heck, if you can get 10% off your dinner check, why not? So it's always going to be one of those things where it's like, what's something that people are going to want to grab to, whether or not they're local or visiting or anything like that? And what's something that people are going to be grabbing? What is something that people normally grab? One place that I used to advertise in was a newspaper, and not that many people read newspapers anymore. And so I'm sorry, and advertising a lot of times can be a trial and error kind of thing. You can try it out for a few months if you're really not getting any phone calls. The good thing is with most advertisers, most of them work on a month-by-month basis. So if you find it really not working, or you're spending so much money every month, you're spending like $700 a month to get one phone call, and that one phone call is just about like, oh, I got like a Mercury dime and that's all I have. Like, is it really worth it at that point? It's like, I used to advertise in all sorts of different places. My dad, I know, did all sorts of different places, and he would get like 4 phone calls a year from that place. So then you realize it's like, okay, this is really not working. And so that's one of the kind of beautiful things with advertising, is that most of the time you could really stop at any time if you really feel like it's not working. You could totally switch up your tactics anytime you like. You can, go full bore and advertise in 30 places at once, spend a whole bunch of money and maybe get a few phone calls, or you can just try to find that one sweet area where it's like you're spending a good amount of money, but you're getting a whole lot of phone calls from it. You're getting a lot of people coming in. And like I said, with like coupon books, something like that, is that it encourages people to walk on into your shop. It really does. You want to try to find something where it's like, you got to get people to come on in. You want to find people where it's like, oh, if you spend $20 or more, you can get a free coin, or come on in and get 10% off supplies or whatever. Use this coupon to do it, or must-have coupon to, to be applied. And so that's one of those really big things, at least personally to me, is that you really want to get people in your shop. And so that's like what I said is one of the bigger things with advertising. And yeah, you can just totally customize it. You could totally do whatever you want. You could totally think about, however you want to do it, however you want to just make it out. And so that kind of finishes out some of that section, but then it's almost a borderline continuation of the next part of what you need opening a shop. Aside from everything else that is around you that you can control with the phone calls, the emails, the advertising, the permits, all this, the bills and the paperwork, the next thing you need to have is knowledge. In any coin business, you got to have knowledge. Knowledge is power, and everybody will say that. I can't stress that one enough. I've seen so many people lose money merely because they just didn't have the knowledge to operate whether or not it was their shop, their booth, their stall, anything correctly, or just their business as a whole. And so, yeah, I even say in an industry such as this, it is very easy to lose your money or even potential money if you don't have the right tools at your disposal. And the biggest one you have is your own knowledge. That's going to be the biggest thing, is not that you have to know more than everybody else around you. Everybody's all different, but you got to have your own tools of knowledge at your disposal. And you don't even, like I said, you don't even need to know everything. There's so many tools out there. There's Gray Sheet, there's the Red Book. I refer to those two guides more than anything, Gray Sheet and Red Book. Red Book, I really like going back to, not for prices. I like going to it for weight. I like going to it for mintage when somebody moans at me and saying, what do you mean that a 1919 SW penny is not worth any money or worth only 25 cents? So I like going to the Red Book and saying, hey, they made like this many millions. And so that's one of those really good guides that I like to use it for. And of course, weight. Everybody knows weight of everything is in the Red Book. Memorizing some of those weights, memorizing silver content of like Morgan dollars, like when somebody asks me like, hey, how much silver is in a Morgan dollar? And it's like, well, it's 0.77322 ounces or 0.77344 ounces or something like that. I said 22. I said, yeah, 0.77344 ounces. Now I'm going to have to go back to the Red Book and double check. Darn it. My knowledge is slipping. So, and so it's always good to know. And, obviously when people ask like, oh, how much, was $20 gold pieces where that actually, like they say 90% gold. What's the other 10%? It's copper. It's, and all that stuff is in the Red Book. A lot of that stuff you can refer back to. And like I said, you're not going to know everything. And that's why I always like having a Red Book at my disposal. Like if somebody asks like, oh, like, like a certain coin, like, well, like how many did they make of, this year of this mint? It's like, you know what? I actually don't even know. Let's go to the Red Book and see. And it's like, oh, they made 652,000. It's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And so even though you may not know it, you're still going to be perceived as a knowledgeable person by having the tools at your disposal and being able to refer to those tools and provide a correct answer. And then, of course, the Gray Sheet, CDN, I fully endorse CDN, and I'm not doing that as like an ad. Most dealers have heard of Gray Sheet, CDN Publishing, the market reviews. Prices on that are just, for lack of a better term, very accurate. I go by those books all the time. I go by those values. I trust their values. I trust their research, everything like that. And so going back to those guides and seeing what coins are worth is a very good tool to use. And then another tool for figuring out prices, at least for me personally, is eBay, especially for stuff that is not listed or something that's a little bit that's like constantly changing. Because sometimes the Gray Sheet will say something is worth $60, and then I'll go to eBay and I'm like, oh, but they're selling for around 50. It's like, so you kind of get a little bit more accurate pricing there. And so that's why I fully endorse, and I really do like Gray Sheet, but I like eBay as well. But for the most part, not Facebook, all these different sites. Gray Sheet is going to be one of the better guides that I go to, and I always refer back to it. And it shows everything in black and white numbers. It's quick and easy, It's a really great guide, and I like using it. Yep. And then even my next point where I say nobody knows everything, but you got to learn as much as you can from well-recognized numismatists or those with simply more experience. And now that kind of goes with, a little bit, take it with a grain of salt kind of thing. Because sometimes those with more experience sometimes may not be as knowledgeable. There's some people that I've known that have been doing coins for, 30 years. That's more than my whole life. But if you're kind of in and out of the hobby, if you're not really interested in learning anything new, you're not going to advance as somebody as quickly as somebody that's constantly like every day picking up a red book, every day picking up a magazine, every day reading a new coin book, something about coin history, anything like that. And I recommend there's so many different books on coin history, numismatic history that I recommend reading so you can become familiar with the mints, become familiar with just the history as a whole, because you never know when those questions are going to come on up, or when you can enlighten somebody like, hey, this is why this coin is so significant. This is why this coin is very valuable, or this is why. So you got to constantly move forward in your knowledge. You got to constantly keep just keep learning, just keep on asking people. Some of the more well-knowledge numismatists, obviously they're going to be like Langs, Miles Standish, Jeff Garrett, there's going to be all those guys. I refer a lot of times to the NGC guys because, well, I'm a little bit biased towards NGC. I like NGC, but PCGS has its place in the market, and I like PCGS. But I know I ask a lot of NGC experts for a lot of advice when it comes to grading, authenticity, varieties, stuff like that. I know, and then of course, any of the bigger dealers out there, we all know who they are. Personally, I love dealing with Jeff Garrett. He's a very good colleague, or I shouldn't say colleague, more like a friend, because I work with him, and he's a very well-knowledge numismatist, and I look up to him greatly. I look up to Standish. I look up to like Salzburg, who's NGC's head, and just any of those big guys. And I know I'm missing out so many names. I'm just drawing a blank on names right now, but I look up to so many of them because they are very well recognized, and they're well recognized for a reason, because they do know what they're talking about. They're those types of people where whenever they talk, I shut up and listen, for lack of better terms. I listen to those guys. I listen to what they have to say because they've been doing this way before I was a thought. And so it's so nice hearing talking to these guys, hearing them speak, hearing what they have to say, and anything like that. And so kind of leads over to the next bullet point where it's like, be open-minded. So many people I know, or not so many, but a few people I've come across, they'd like to be very like, oh, this is not what it is. This is not that. This is not that. Oh, BS to what that person says. And I'm like, well, they've been doing coins for 70 years. I don't know why you're saying BS to what they say. So there's so many people that are, or like I've had some people where it's like, oh, NGC's never right in their grading, or PCGS just don't know what they're, it's like, you got to be open-minded to what they're talking about. Listen to what people are saying. When somebody tries to teach you like, oh, this is why this coin is graded MS64, this is why. Want to be a little bit more open-minded. And that was something that I personally had to learn when I spent some time in NGC. I was there for a few years, and I learned that I had to be very open-minded to what all the other graders have to say. You can't be closed-minded. You really gotta put yourself out there and see what everybody else is saying, because you don't know everything. I don't know everything. All these other guys, they don't know everything. They know a lot, but they don't know everything. And then that leads to the next few points where it's like, expose yourself to a wide variety of material, go to different websites, read a ton of books, read as many books as you can. I definitely implore that. I've read quite a few myself, and I've read a lot of Lang's books. I've read a bunch of different books, a bunch of variety books. And so you definitely want to expose yourself to that kind of material, constantly going over it again and again. But that's just a me personally kind of thing. You really want to get that ingrained in your memory. So it's like, oh yeah, like this is what happened. Like, oh, this mint director died at this time. Like, I would go super in depth about mint directors, but I'm not gonna go and do that because there's some significant ones out there. You should totally read about quite a lot of them. They're really fun. Establish a library for yourself. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a little bit of a recommended. I have a fairly decent sized library, but most of the time I find myself, believe it or not, actually referring to about 4 to 5 books, not including the red book, like completely not including the red book. I find myself really only returning to a few because most of them kind of are just like really specialized books. I definitely recommend first getting your whole hands a hold of like obviously a red book, and then getting your hands a hold of some more generalized like history, generalized stuff like that about coins, because that's where you're going to kind of get a good overall like an overview of everything. And so you know you can basically answer questions to like most anything even by reading those books, because most of the people that are going to walk into your shop, not saying that like, oh, you're never going to get in a true numismatist, but most of the people that are going to walk into your shop more often than not are not going to ask you a super hard numismatic question like, oh, who designed this coin? Like most people don't care. Believe it or not, one of the biggest questions that I get of a designer of a coin is like, why do they call it the Morgan dollar? It's like, well, the designer was George T. Morgan, and they just called it that. It's like, oh, that's like the biggest question that I get when it comes to a designer being involved. So it's like, a lot of that stuff you could just pick up and get generalized idea. And then if you want to pick a subject of interest, like such as like seated coinage, bust coinage, early gold, anything like that, and then there's a plethora of books just on that, early coppers, anything you want. There's a whole lot of different books just on that alone. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do. And then unfortunately, there's no college courses on coins that you have. So you have to basically educate yourself somewhat. One of the bigger things that I say somewhat is because there is some things that you could do. Obviously, you got right here, the symposium to learn about coins. There's a whole bunch of other people in the symposium. I know Lang did a talk and so knowledgeable. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can learn from coins through courses. Obviously, the American Numismatic Association puts on their summer seminars every year. I attended quite a few of those myself. And so I learned a great deal about coins, met amazing people at that seminar. I met so many amazing people, great friends that I still have nowadays that I met at that seminar, opened up many doors for me. Just going to them and, just exposing myself to all those amazing people with coins and talking about coins just 24/7. And so it's like a yes, but no, when it comes to like, oh, there's no real, because I've even had people ask me, it's like, oh, is there a college course that you can take on it? I'm like, no, unfortunately, there just isn't. You just got to kind of, go to either online courses like such as this to learn it, go to summer seminars, which I know this past year they did it online, or basically just go to like, I know like larger shows such as Fun and the ANA shows, they'll have educational seminars and conference rooms and stuff like that. And so you'll see there's many opportunities to take courses and to learn stuff like that, like this. And so even though there's no an official like, oh, college credits, anything like that, there's a whole bunch of seminars that you can go to and take classes that can broaden your horizon, get you in connection with some other people, learn from them, and anything like that. And so working on basically, now that we got the knowledge thing kind of set up, and most of this is going to kind of relate back to a lot of what I was just saying, where it's like you want to expose yourself to the material, do some of, not saying you have to do all these things, you want to learn. Like I said, one of the first points that I made right there is work part-time as an intern. most people, when you want to go straight into working full time, you got to kind of understand what it is kind of part time. You got to know if you truly love it, if you truly have a passion for it. Anything like that. Volunteer at coin shows, go out to coin shows, see how coin shows operate. Set up tables at shows, see how the flow of people through rooms and everything like that, see how everything's all set up, learn all of that stuff. May not seem important, but at shows, it's actually very important as to like where certain people are, where the layout of the rooms are, how spaced apart the tables are. So it's always really good to have that knowledge, learn from the dealers, because a lot of times you'll see dealers at these show setups and you can kind of learn, and down another point, ask dealers for input. You can kind of ask dealers like, hey, how are these shows like? How are these shows this? How are these shows that? And so you can kind of get a really good idea on shows, setups, and most of the, a good portion of those dealers, kind of depending on the dealers in the show. Some of those dealers will even have their own shops as well. I actually, believe it or not, attended a show yesterday. And so I've even had some people asking me like, oh, what's having a shop like? What's it this? What's it that? And so I was able to answer some questions there. Some people were asking me stuff like that. And I don't mind answering to people. I really don't. If anything, I really do like talking to a lot of the people at the shows because they're actually really nice people. And so it's really nice. And then with a lot of these shows, most of them are actually coin clubs putting on these shows. And really good thing is to attend coin club meetings, because even then, what I was saying in the last slide, where it's like no courses you could take, you can attend coin club meetings. And most coin club meetings will have an educational part of their meeting. And so you can actually attend a meeting. I believe most clubs, it's about $10 usually for a membership per year. And you can literally show up and just learn something new every time. Like for basically $1 a meeting, you can learn whatever. You can learn, whatever they're teaching about, whether or not it's grading coins, certain varieties. How coins look when you put them in a ketchup bottle, there's all that stuff. Like that's actually happened before, and that's actually pretty intriguing, believe it or not. Like you could just mess around and just see what happens. Like just kind of go to some coin club meetings, have some fun, meet new people, get new friends. And then you can kind of establish yourself. You can establish like, what kind of community you have, anything like that. Speaking of community, another thing that you want to do is learn the business. That's kind of like the next main thing. So many people that want to get into this don't, I shouldn't say a lot, but some people do want to get straight into it without learning either business etiquette. Obviously, in a business like this, we're all out to make money. You can't just, buy a coin for $20 and sell it for $20. That should be a given, but you'd be shocked as to how many people actually don't know that, because I've actually had to tell some people that. And so it's one of those things you really got to definitely pick up. Not saying you have to take a business course, not saying you have to attend business, anything like that. It's mostly just learning the business, learning how these things go, learning how coin shows go, learning how other people's coin, like other dealers' coin shops are, learning all these other things, like what are some of the major like do's and don'ts, and I'll get into that one in a later slide. And so you just want to learn a whole lot of that kind of stuff, where it's just, like, what do you do when a buy comes in? What do you do when a customer does this? What do you do when? And so you just want to learn the business. And most of that's going to come down to, going to shows, asking people how it is, going to other dealers' coin shops, seeing how it is. And then the next couple of steps is basically kind of just repeats of the last slide, where it's like, get yourself some knowledge. You're definitely going to need that. You want to have some background knowledge, whether or not, if it is working part-time in another dealer's shop, working with a certain company, possibly working with or volunteering at shows, doing all of this. And you want to establish some knowledge, establish yourself a little bit of credibility, everything like that. And then even with shows, at shows is a really great opportunity for yourself to build some inventory. You can buy a lot of fun stuff at shows. I know I certainly do. I like buying stuff at shows because then I can build my inventory. I love building my inventory. And then with building your inventory, you got to build your capital. Obviously, with a lot of people, I even read online what people saying like, oh, what are some of the major steps to having a coin shop? One of the first things people say is build some capital. And I've seen numbers ranging from $10,000 up to literally $1 million. I've literally seen it. And you don't need $1 million. I'm going to say that one right now. You do not need $1 million to open up a coin shop. I do not have $1 million and I'm working a coin shop and I'm perfectly fine. 10,000 is low. If you got a lot of inventory, even then $10,000 is still a little bit on the, you probably want to have at least upwards of close to minimum about, and this is just me, totally do not have to go with this one. Most dealers, I don't even know what most dealers would say. That's probably something I should ask them. But a lot of people are going to say you want at least 40 to 50,000 ish in inventory. You don't need to have that much. I know dealers that work with way less inventory. When I first opened up my shop, I had about like maybe $10,000 to $12,000 worth of inventory. I think maybe even a little bit less. So you don't need a heck of a lot of inventory. Now my inventory has grown up to the point of like the 40, 50,000 mark. And I know some dealers have $1 million inventories. And so it's, you know, and then I know even like a lot of other dealers nearby and they have, you know, $250,000 inventories. So it's ultimately just get a good established inventory where you can fill up a shop, build yourself some capital. Usually with capital, like I said, a lot of people are saying like, oh, you got to have at least 50,000 capital. That's about right where you want to be ish, but you don't have to. Capital is such a loose term and nobody can truly agree on a number. Like I said, they range all the way from not even like $10,000 up to like people saying like, oh, you got to have at least $1 million to open up a shop. No, you don't. But you know, you do want to have that money backing because you don't want to be day one and you have $2 in your pocket and somebody comes in with $50 Morgan dollars. You don't want that to happen. You want to have some money and, you know, you want to have a decent amount of it to where you could do buys efficiently, you know, get most buys, you know, most of the time, nobody's going to come on in with 40 ounces of gold. Most of the time. Every now and then, but that usually doesn't happen usually in the first week. So get some capital, get some inventory going, and that's going to be one of your biggest steps along with the knowledge. The next thing with opening a shop, once you got your inventory, you got your capital, you got your knowledge, and you got all your bills going. Another big thing is having good ethics. And having good ethics, you got to be honest with the customer. You got to treat them kindly. I know a lot of people, it's like, this is going to be like, oh, no, duh. Of course you treat your customers right. Well, every now and then you're going to reach a butthole dealer. We've all had a butthole dealer that we dealt with. So you always want to be kind to your customers. Be honest. If you legitimately do not know something, like if somebody asks you something like, you know, something that you legitimately do not know, you don't want to, for lack of a better term, blow smoke up somebody's butt. You want to, I've literally told people, it's like, I actually do not know. Be honest. You know, say something like, you know, oh, I don't know. Or I know somebody asked me a question about a certain so-called dollar and I know of the dollar, but I don't know a whole lot of the history behind it. And I literally told the customer, I'm like, you know what? I know of these so-called dollars. I don't know the specific history behind it. And I even pulled up on my phone the specific site and I was like, oh yeah, and then this is what it is. You could do a whole lot more reading here and saying like, oh yeah, it did this, for the economy, you know, you can read up on it. And so it's not a bad thing to say like, oh, I don't know. Not bad. Explain things without using large terminology. You don't want to confuse your customers, especially if they're not numismatists. If they're just getting into the hobby, you don't want to use huge terms. because all you're going to do is just end up confusing your customers. And the customers that are confused, anything like that, they're not going to want to come on back to you because they just feel like it's just one whole confusion fest. It's just like, I don't get what they're saying. I never really understand. You always want to tone everything down with the terminology. Like I said, especially if you're talking with somebody that's new into coins, educate your customers, make them feel comfortable, make them feel like they're in a nice environment where they can learn about coins, where they can freely ask questions, no matter how, silly the question may be, no matter how simple or even no matter how complex it may be. Your customers always want to feel welcome, feel comfortable, feel good for working with you. And then speaking of things that you do want to do, here's some things you don't want to do. Do not bring emotion into the business. This is an easy one. This is easy one I say is because I've seen this one a lot. And I say you will lose money because you will lose money if you bring emotion into the business. So many times I'll get people coming on in saying like, oh, my father just died and inherited a bunch of coins and, all of this, that, and the other. And I say, sorry for your loss. Let me see what he's got or see what you have. And, a lot of times they'll only have maybe $100 worth of coins. And they were like, oh yeah, this is my entire inheritance. They were saying like, oh, it's going to set me for life, all this, that, and the other. And to yourself, you're like, no, you're like, this is not good. And so it's like, I've had so many people coming up to me and I tell them like, hey, this is what it's worth. Like I can show you in the gray sheets on eBay in black and white, it's not as worth as much as you may think. And they're like, and I get some people that are very argumentative saying like, oh, what do you mean that my grandfather this, and it's like, I didn't say anything, but, or if some people try to say like, hey, I really need money. I really need, this and the other. Can you give me $200 for this lot? And it's only worth $100. Well, you don't want to give them $200 for a set of coins that is worth only $100. You can't bring emotion into it. You can't let your emotions, you can't let anger get out. You can't let, sympathy get out. You just got to be, like I said, you just can't let emotion get into it. Because you're just going to eventually lose money if you try to hand them a couple more dollars than you should. If you do that 10, 20 times a year, next thing you know, you're $100 less. And it's just one of those things. Like I said, it's just, you just don't bring emotion into it. And most people will say just to not do it. Don't bring emotion into it. Like I said, it is sad that when, if family members die and everything like that or pass away, but can't bring emotion into it. You're a business. You got to look out for yourself. And that's another big piece of advice I can give. You got to look out for yourself. If somebody is mistreating you, anything like that, I always tell people just to kindly leave my store, anything like that. It's not worth it. You just got to leave it, take care of yourself. Do not misinform customers. This goes back to the point of being honest. Don't blow smoke up a customer's butt because you think you know everything and you don't. Don't misinform them, because if they find out, which they could, they're going to know that it's like, wow, he's just a liar. I'm not going to go back to him, and you may not be a liar. You may have been intentionally trying to give them the right information, but you gave them the wrong information. And so they're really not going to have a good feeling in their head about you. And so just say, I don't know. I don't know everything. I'm human. It is what it is. I can find out. I can do some research. I have people send me pictures of really weird oddball coins. When somebody describes a coin very weird to me, I'm like, what, just send it to me on my phone. Let me look at it and I can evaluate it. And then I'll look at it and then they'll be like, well, so what is it worth? And I'm like, I actually don't know. I got to do some research. Let me take a look into it because I don't know. So you definitely do want to don't misinform your customers. Do not assume things. Basically, don't assume with what your customers say is correct. Do not assume with what certain coins and in certain boxes things are correct. This is actually a personal lesson of myself, and this is a true story, by the way. I bought a bunch of proof sets from a gentleman once, and this was many years ago. And one of them was the 99 silver proof set, the 1999 silver proof set. And I assumed that the coins were in there, the correct coins were in there, so I never bothered to open up the box because there was a lot of proof sets. There was a lot of proof sets, believe me. And so I assumed that the correct coins were in there. And then when I went home, there was a bunch of clad 2000 coins in the 1999 silver proof set. And I paid him like at the time, like what, near $100 or a little over 100 because those sets were going for crazy way back then. And so, yeah, just don't assume things. Check everything, double check your work. You don't want to assume things like that. Never assume, double check. If somebody brings you in something, you give them an offer, they leave and then come on back saying, oh yeah, I'll take my offer. Double check everything. Make sure it's all there. Everything like that. Don't assume that they just left everything the way it was, because I've seen those tactics too. They will bite you if you are not careful. Do not trash talk your competition. The next, kind of 2 points could kind of go hand in hand-ish. Don't trash talk your competition. People are going to see you as just, well, really not a nice person. If somebody does bring up my competition, like, oh, what do you think of that other guy over there? And I'll be like, oh, he's okay, he's not bad, I don't have to say he's, oh my God, he's the best person ever. But I'm not going to say, oh yeah, that guy, he doesn't know a thing he's talking about. No, I don't say any of that. My customers, if my customers say like, oh yeah, I don't like dealing with that other guy, all this and the other, and I just say, yeah, sometimes he can, I just agree with whatever my customers can say on that, but I don't say anything myself. I don't say nothing. You don't want to say anything, because if you trash talk your competition, it's ultimately going to come back to you. And so you just don't want to do that. You're going to make yourself look bad. You're going to make your business look bad. And so, yeah, you just don't want to do that. Don't flash your cash. Don't flash your ego. Again, nobody likes that. Nobody likes people that just like, oh, look at all this money. Look at all these, there's such thing as like, hey, look at some of the coins I got. And then there's another thing between like, oh yeah, I got all these coins and they're all better than yours. And nobody likes that. Again, people are going to see it. People are not going to want to deal with you if you're like that. Do not judge a book by its cover. I really don't have to say much more on that. Just don't judge a book by its cover. That's pretty much self-explanatory. And then another thing is do not argue opinions. That's kind of a similar thing with I'll bring emotion into it. When somebody says like, oh, I hate my coins being all in, I hate grading coins. This is one of the bigger arguments I get with coins. I hate graded coins. Me personally, I have a bias towards graded coins. I love graded coins. I like coins that are graded, but I like raw coins too. And so you never want to argue like, oh yeah, what do you mean you don't like raw coins? You don't want to get argumentative with customers. If a customer starts getting really rowdy with you, you could just simply say, please leave my store. That's it. You just don't want to argue with people. You don't want to make yourself look bad, because when you find yourself arguing, more often than not, and we can all admit to this, is that you might say something that you don't mean to say, or it may be taken out of context. And so it just looks bad. You could just say like, okay, sir, that's your opinion. That's what you like. Me personally, I like graded coins because of, these reasons. But if you don't like them, then that's your reasons. And so that's where you kind of want to go off. And most people I find, that I do that with, they kind of drop it there because they know that I have my opinions. They have theirs. We leave it at that. There's no arguing. 99.9% of the time, it's pretty much easily diffused, where it's like when people start getting on a rant about something for some reason, because you are going to deal with those customers. You're going to deal with a lot of nice customers, and you are going to deal with some buttholes. I'm not trying to sugarcoat everything. Like everybody that comes on in is gonna, sing you fairy tales. Like, no, you are going to deal with some people that will tell you that you have no idea what you're talking about or something like that. I've had that happen to me many times, where I will explain something and they're going to be like, oh, you just don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, sir, you just simply Googled something for about a few minutes and you're just going off like, I don't know what I'm talking about, and I've been doing this for a while, you know, again, you just don't have to get argumentative with people. Be the better person, take the high road. Don't get into stuff like that. You know, if you want to go home at night, scream your ears off, cry, bloody murder that person's name, go right ahead. Not in the shop. And then one of the last points that I forgot to put it in part of my slide, add yourself some credibility. And I put a whole bunch of images on that slide. Give yourself some credibility, join some orgs, become an authorized dealer. And I'm not saying you have to become an authorized dealer or all that of all these guys, but it will be a pretty decent thing to give yourself some credibility. Join the ANA. I got ANA, NGC, PCGS, PMG, CAC, Wings, PNG, and Fun. And Fun, that's for Florida, but as an example. So, and I get this one a lot. Like, I get a lot of visitors that come into my town and they're like, oh, I don't have a dealer near me. Where can I go? And I always say, you want to look for somebody who has some credibility behind them. Not only many years of experience, you don't want somebody that's like, oh, I just started this 2 months ago. You'd prefer not to deal with somebody that has a very small scope when it comes to coins. And then you want to have somebody that is has some credibility behind them, whether or not if they're an ANA member, NGC or PCGS authorized dealers, a member with CAC, a member with Wings, PNG. I know PNG is very great organization, but one of the biggest ones is going to be the ANA. The ANA is the largest numismatic association. Well, it is the American Numismatic Association, and most people in good standing with them. You know, they have strong ethics, everything like that. ANA holds themselves to a very high standard, as well as its members to a very high standard, and they're a very well respected. I should say name throughout all of coins. You know, if you're in a good standing with the ANA, usually you got at least a little bit of credibility behind you. Not guaranteed, but for the most part, that's at least what I look for in some dealers. And then, of course, being authorized dealers through different submission services, being able to offer that to your customers, being able to do all these things. And yeah, that just kind of adds some credibility. These are kind of like as what we call brownie points. Kind of gives yourself a little bit of oomph, where it's like, oh, what makes you so qualified? It's like, well, I'm a member of the ANA, I'm a member of CAC, I'm a member of Wings, I'm an authorized dealer of PCGS as well as NGC, I'm an authorized dealer of PMG, I'm a member of Fun, I'm a member of the PNG, and it's like, oh, you just got all these things. So that's kind of like my main like closing. There's not like too many main points to go over. Too much more beyond that. Yeah, just mostly, I want to say have fun, but this is a business. I have fun because I have a passion for it, and I get to deal with coins every single day, so it's fun for me. I get to deal with amazing people every day. I got a lot of amazing regulars. When you open up your own shop, you're going to deal with a lot of amazing regulars. You're going to deal with some buttholes, but it is what it is. You're going to have a lot of highs. You're going to have a good amount of lows. But all in all, you just want to, don't want to take my stuff all the time for concrete, but you know what? It's yeah. It's just coins. You just having fun. If you have a passion for coins, you're going to find yourself very successful when you surround yourself by a lot of good people, surround yourself by knowledge. Like I said, with this whole thing, it doesn't have to be taken in concrete, but these are just some main points that I personally came up with. But other dealers could have some other perspectives. Like I said, in other cities, in your areas, they could be different, they could vary. But yeah, that's kind of the main closing part of my segment for the most part. Let's see here. The Q&A.
Yes, I will facilitate that. Awesome. That was an amazing presentation. I absolutely love that. And the audience did too, all the attendants. The Q&A was blowing up. I don't know if you could see it, but I could see it. And we have so much stuff in there. So
Okay.
they all really enjoyed it. And yeah, so we can jump into that. I do know that we will not have time to answer all the questions because there are almost 30 of them. And
Okay.
so I just encourage you guys, all the attendants that had questions, you can find Alexandria and her coin shop. I did a quick search on my phone during the presentation. You can find it pretty easy. Just search Alexandrea Zieman coin shop. It's the first thing that pops up. You can contact her and the coin shop on their website. So I do encourage you guys, if you have any questions that we don't get to, reach out to them, contact them. I'm sure she would be happy to. Yes, exactly.
Right
I'm
here.
sure she'd be happy to answer all
Right
your
there.
questions.
The beautiful. Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Feel free to reach to me.
Well, Alexandria, if you want to stop your screen share so everyone can see your picture big and nice at the top of the screen, it should be a red.
Okay, so just stop share.
Yep.
Got it.
Perfect. Now everyone can see your face nice and big on their screen instead of your presentation, and we will answer some questions. So first question, did you develop a business plan to give to the bank for a loan to increase your store inventory? How much detail went into that business plan? And do you have any comments on how that all started?
When it came to between us and the bank, believe it or not, for many years we did do, well, this was before opening up the coin shop. And so, but that was when we did go to the bank for some loans, taking out of the home equity line, everything like that. But throughout many years of, this was just us personally, we got to the point to where we were actually able to start self-financing ourselves, where it was, many years of doing shows, flea markets, stuff like that, to where we no longer really needed the banks. We no longer really relied on the bank for any loans, anything like that. We started to self-finance, and that's one of the biggest things that you want to start doing as soon as you can when you get into the business. And that's actually, believe it or not, personally what I'm doing right now, is that my dad and I put both of our monies together, and then we were able to finance it. And then anything larger transactions, like somebody comes in with a bunch of gold, our family as a whole is able to finance it ourselves without any bank interference, bank loans, anything like that. Because of course, bank loans and the interests, it's going to add up over time. And so you want to have your own money, rely on your own money being there, and that it's there. And with this being a cash business, you want to almost overnight, like if you need $50,000 right now, boom, you got it. Your bank, they're going to ask questions, all this and the other. You want to have that money on hand. So that's at least me.
Yeah.
That's just me personally, but it all comes down. Some people are different. Some people work very closely with the banks. Some people like me try to break away from it. Yes, I got a business account, but I don't do loans through it. That's where I can write checks, do wire transfers, and that's mostly what it's used for.
Yeah. Another question, do you sell much on eBay, or do you only buy stuff through eBay?
I do both. I find myself almost doing equal buying on eBay as I do selling on eBay. Just because on eBay, yes, there is a decent focus on it, but you can go to a whole lot of other sites such as like Facebook, where you can avoid a lot of those fees that eBay has nowadays. And so I find myself doing a lot of buying on that. And a lot of times you can find really good deals, dealers selling it at stuff at just wholesale just to get rid of it. And so you can just jump right on and grab some stuff. And so I do a lot of buying on Facebook as well. But eBay, I do some selling. I do selling as well. I don't do thousands of items every day. It's only maybe, I have a couple hundred items on there at any given time. And then just a few sell here, a few sell there. And then I constantly buy on eBay. I constantly trying to see what I can find but with eBay, it's another one of those things where it's like, if something's a really good deal, people are going to snatch it up really quick. So you got to constantly be on there. And so, but you can still get lucky on eBay. So.
Kind of a follow-up question, is selling on eBay a lot of work for what your profit is?
It kind of depends on what you're selling on eBay. For us, most of the things that at least that we put on eBay is kind of stuff where we're kind of unsure about ourselves, whether or not if it's like value, really oddball stuff that we really don't think that would ever sell in a shop setting. And so every now and then I'll buy like, like an Indonesian proof set of some sort that was just in a bottom of a box. And I'm like, oh, I paid like $5 for this. I'll throw it up on eBay. Next thing you know, I get, $60. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that set was worth that much. That's kind of like where I make a decent amount, but that's maybe like 2 or 3 times a year where I get those like, oh, wow, I didn't realize. Or I bought a national note of this small town and it's like, oh, wait a minute. It's actually like $100 note and I had no idea. And I bought it as part of a lot and it was just mixed in there. So, but most of the time with the fees and everything like that, it's still worth it because you still got to figure out your numbers, your profit, the eBay fees that suck, but you deal with it. So profits are not bad, but it is a pain in the butt. If you're willing to do that much work for however much profit you got to make, you got to always consider it like if a coin sells for $50, you got to minus 10%. You got to minus $3+ for shipping. You got to, and then you got to figure out like how much you want to make. You want to make 10%? You want to make 20? Or do you want to just make a whole enchilada? Like, what do you want to do? So it ultimately depends on the work that you want to do. But since so many people do it, it is a lot of, it can be very lucrative if you're willing to put the time into it.
Okay. Who were your mentors?
My mentors. One of the biggest shout outs is going to be my dad, who has brought me into the hobby since I was 8 years old. And so I can't thank my dad enough for helping me out and encouraging me to do coins ever since I was 8, and opened up a booth with me there since I was 12. And so constantly pushing me forward. So my dad is my first main mentor. The next couple of ones, he said I actually could mention his name, is Alex Molinos. Now he does part-time with NGC, and he has been my mentor. He's been like a second father to me. And he's taught me so much about coins, just so much while I was at NGC. He is literally one of the best. He's one of those types of people you wouldn't assume that he has a lot of knowledge, but he's an encyclopedia. like one of those types of people, and he's just so amazing, so fun. And then just a lot of the people at NGC. Rick Montgomery was a very good one. He very well knowledged in authenticity of coinage. Mark Salzberg, who is just very well knowledged in authenticity as well as grading. And all the people at NGC, most of them really did bring me up into grading and authenticity, and a few of them really brought me into their hearts, and they just really nurtured me into the hobby and into the business, into what coins is really all about as well. And so I got most of my dad and a lot of the people at NGC to thank for that.
Very cool. Someone says, great presentation. What's the most interesting thing that has walked into your shop?
Well, into the shop here, geez, I haven't had anything too interesting coming into the shop. I mean, I've had a bunch of gold, a bunch of silver, a bunch of really cool oddball coins. But before I opened my shop, believe it or not, while I was still an NGC grader, the most interesting things were 43 coppers. That was the most interesting. And so but in the shop here, I can't really think of much. Mostly because where I work is in a touristy area, and so we don't get as many hardcore collectors sometimes. I do got my regulars, but they show me their collections, and of course I'm like, oh wow, you can totally sell that to me. But mostly just a lot of really nice Morgans, a lot of really sweet gold pieces I've seen, but nothing too crazy. But like I said, the most interesting thing that I've ever come across that's physically went through my hands was some 43 coppers, but that was back when I was still an NGC grader and represented the gentleman on the sale. I wish I could say more on that, but
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, that would be a cool thing to be able to see. Those are pretty cool. Another question, you recommend joining wings. What is your impression on how widely accepted they are, and are they increasing their presence?
Wings, I think they've been making a little bit of a slow uprise. They're not as big as like CAC, obviously CAC is like the main green bean, whereas wings is basically the CAC equivalent, but with foreign coins. And in the US, even though foreign coins is still a very widely loved part of the hobby, section of the hobby or subset, CAC is still always going to be the standard, in my opinion. Wings is working on its way to getting on up there. I know some people do like wings, some people don't. It's not a requirement. I personally do have a few coins with wings, and I know a lot of the people there, and so they're really nice. And I work with, they're really nice people, and so like I said, it's not really a requirement with wings as it is much with CAC, because CAC, everybody loves CAC. That's the main standard. I just put it up there as another example of like, oh, CAC, if you like foreign coins, there's wings.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. Well, I will go ahead and wrap up. I know you guys are open today. Your shop's open today, so I'm sure you guys
gonna be
have
opening
stuff
it
to do. But thank you for the awesome presentation. A lot of the questions that were in the chat were more comments, just thanking you for the awesome presentation. Everyone really, really enjoyed it. It was very entertaining, and just everyone learned a ton. I learned a ton. It was great. So thank you for volunteering your time and your knowledge and educating us on this topic. And thank you for all of the attendance, for showing up and listening to Alexandria speak. We hope that you guys are able to tune into some of the other NNP Symposium presentations. The next one starts at 11:30, so make sure you tune into that. But again, thank you, Alexandria, and everyone have a great day.
Yes, thank you.